Hello everybody and welcome back to Forza Horizon 4 with, well, a situation. We are in a bit of a power war right now. No, not dictators or anything. No, I'm talking horsepower war. Yes, we have cars like this Rimac here generating over 1,800 horsepower. Some cars are pushing the 2,000 horsepower barrier. But if you look at the top speeds, they're not much faster than this, the Mclaren F1, which did its top speed of 240 miles an hour with less than 630 horsepower. And that lack of power, it's still 600 horsepower, that lack of power in comparison gave me an idea. What if I would try to hit 200 miles an hour with the least horsepower required? The Ford GT4. Now, I went with the Mark 1 because it starts out less powerful, 390 horsepower. And honestly, I thought I could do it with 390. It's a very aerodynamic car. I was hitting 200 miles an hour in real life. I thought it would be pretty good. Not quite enough. We don't have a limitless straight like Le Mans. We just have this freeway bit here, which, yes, it is downhill, so it's slightly cheating, but it is the best speedrunning area that we have, and if you don't make it by the kink, you're not going to do it. And this required 413 horsepower to hit 200 miles an hour, which is not bad at all, but I was expecting a little better, and I knew I could do better. So I went with a different vehicle. The E30 M3, yes, it has the aerodynamics of a barn, but it actually has a pretty high speed rating, like the little bar that says, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good your speed is. It had a pretty good one for less than 200 horsepower, so I thought I'd give it a try. And one thing that's very important to note about Forza is body kits help with drag. Even a front bumper, even as long as it's not a racing front bumper with a splitter, can reduce drag. Removing spoiler reduces drag. Rear bumper, side skirts, they all reduce drag in this game. So, if you find a car with body kits like that, chances are it will go much faster than you think. And that is why the E30 M3 hit 200 miles an hour with less than 400 horsepower. 399 to be exact. It is less than 400, not much, but it is less. And I did that while still being a box. But again, I knew I could do better. And I ended up with, I went from the Germans to the French. The Rhino Alpine A110, the new one. That was, I picked it just because it had a decent amount of performance, had some good aerodynamics, not too much power, and it needed 393 horsepower. We're starting to get down there, fellas. But I was expecting a little better. I didn't want to just fall into the trap of old cars. Obviously, the classic racers will be by far the best at this. But that's a little bit boring, so I went with some new cars, and the Alpine was good. It wasn't as good as I was hoping for, I'll be honest. Well, quite a fair ways down the road, relative speaking, we have, the Nissan S14 Silvia. Yes, the body kit looks ridiculous, and you would think, well, again, that can't help with aerodynamics. It looks like a barn you stuck on the front of it. However, it actually increased my top speed by 0.2 of a mile an hour. And in this game, 0.2 of a mile an hour matter. Hell, I was tuning the suspension to be all funky and weird for 0.1 of a mile an hour, because anything that get me closer to the top speed was going to be a good thing. And some of these cars were pushing it quite hard. The S14 here had 385 horsepower, so we are getting down there. That's actually pretty low on the power figure scale. Some of the cars were really pushing it. Take, for instance, the next car, the Acura RSX Type R. This had 378 horsepower, and is also notable for being the only front-wheel drive car here. Yeah. Now, I saw this car. It wasn't that impressive, if I'm honest, but it said it could do 150 miles an hour, and then I put the body count, which, yes, it looks hideous. Provided you put any front wing on, it would increase the top speed. If you put any side skirt on, it would increase top speed. So at that point, I just tried to make it as ugly as humanly possible, and I think I succeeded. The RSX was really pushing it. It was really hard trying to get that thing to 200 miles an hour. But eventually, I just clicked over with about a tenth of a second of road left. I clicked over to 200 miles an hour. Really pushing it. That is one of the most I had to push. We continue on with the Japanese theme, well, sort of accurate, but whatever. With Toyota, the 2000 GT. I saw this car. One, it looked pretty aerodynamic. Two, it looked pretty good. And it was new, so I wanted to try it out. And most of these cars use their standard engine, including this one. I think it was turbocharged, though. So it had 360 horsepower. So we're starting to trickle down. But it was, that one wasn't too bad. None of these cars were bad handling, okay? None of them were very bad handling, because there's no rules about having maximum tire width or maximum suspension or anything. There's no rules on price. I can put whatever I want on it. I just can't put much power on. Which means these were all really nice handling cars. And well, that goes for the Subaru as well, the Subaru BRZ. This is the Japanese section of the table, I guess. We have the Silvia, the Toyota, the Acura, and now the Subaru. This had 4 horsepower less than the Toyota. And again, very good handling. I did not go for the body count on this because it did actually increase drag, so that was a no-go. Some of the body kits reduced it, some of the body kits increased it. This is the one where it did increase it. But it did reach 200 miles an hour, almost sub 350 horsepower, not quite though. That honor would go to the RX-7 Spirit R. Again with the hideous body kits, but you gotta do what you gotta do to get more speed out of it. This thing had 10 horsepower less, just 346 horsepower for the little rotary. Again, I picked it because it looked pretty aerodynamic, it's pretty fast, and if you recall my top speed, my video I did for the JDM challenge, the Spirit R was very fast. It hit like I think it hit 170-ish miles an hour, completely bone stock, so it didn't take too much power to get it up to 200. And these cars, you're really having to tinker with them. It's a very interesting way of building them. You add an intercooler, and then you take off all the intercooler and add on 2 different parts, so it's a net gain of like 2 horsepower. That's what I was getting it to. I subtract 10, add 11, so I only have a 1 horsepower gain, and that will get me to 200 miles an hour. It's really finicky, but it was a unique challenge. Now, I know you're looking at the mono here and thinking, well, that's a track car. Track cars have no straight line speed, and that is correct. But this vehicle is so aerodynamic that it actually didn't need that much power. It needed 339 horsepower. It has 280 from stock, and I will be honest, I forgot to take the downforce off for the first few runs, so I wasted about half an hour, and then I realized it has downforce on it, and that makes it go significantly faster when you cut the downforce in half. Yeah. So yeah, this thing is... The mono is always a very solid choice for speedrunning, ironically enough, because it's just, well, nothing. It's an engine, a seat, and some wheels. That's it. It weighs nothing, it's super aerodynamic, and that means it's surprisingly good at speedrunning for being a track car, which track cars are not known for being, top speedish. Now, the Porsche 356 Grr Coupe, is another track car, very different one though, starts out with 46 horsepower. I chose this one because it looked semi-aerodynamic. I think it competed at Le Mans, if I recall. And now we're starting to get into the classic cars. This is the worst of the classic cars at 326 horsepower. But I will say it was interesting to drive. And for being so old, it is only 1 horsepower worse, I guess, in this scenario, than its next vehicle, the Maserati birdcage bathtub. Yes, once you look at it, the back of it, it is a bathtub forever. You can never unview that. This had, 1 horsepower less, 325, which I think stands to the greatness of the Porsche engineering, because that was made in the 40s, maybe even earlier, that 356, and the birdcage is made in the 50s. So, pretty good on the Porsche engineers to be so good with the birdcage, because the birdcage is very aerodynamic. And, yeah, 200 miles an hour with 325 horsepower. Now we're starting to get pretty darn low. Amusingly, we have the 1973 Rhino Alpine as our next car. 314 horsepower is all it took for this vehicle. I thought this one would do a little bit better, I'll be honest. I started out building without 290 horsepower, and it was really close. It was at like 195-ish, and it just could not get past that. It needed so much more power than I thought it would to get past that 195 barrier into the 200s, but it did it, so it's interesting. I didn't actually realize, I didn't remember that I built the other modern Alpine until I already built the old one, so like father, like son, I guess. The Alpine was very aerodynamic. I wanted to put the GT body kit on of silliness, but that increased the drag, so I sadly could not go for the silly body kit, but there you go. And you know what? Just 2 miles an hour further down the road is probably the biggest disappointment right now. The Porsche 718. This thing is crazy aerodynamic. I've actually seen one of these. It's tiny. It looks like a stool. It's as tall as one for sure. And it was just not fast enough. It had 312 horsepower, which is very, very good. But honestly, I expected better. Because I can just look at it. It's very aerodynamic looking. And yet it just could not get up to speed. It was very fast, accelerating about 190. And after that, it just died. Which is a shame, because I often know when very few people remember the 718. But it was good, 312 horsepower for 200 miles an hour is incredibly good. But not quite good enough for the top 3. There would be a Porsche in the top 3, but it was the 550, the Spyder. Now, I'm a little confused by that, because the 550 does not look nearly as aerodynamic as the 718s, but whatever. The 550 has the honor of being the first car to crack the 300 horsepower barrier, with just 272 horsepower needed to push it to 200 miles an hour, and again, I'm a little confused by that. It doesn't look very aerodynamic. It kind of looks like if someone squished a Beetle, or maybe squished a 911 into a pancake. I don't know how it's so fast, but it is incredibly fast, and it's actually not bad handling either. Not too bad, anyway. For being made in, I want to say it's the 50s? Again, I've seen one of these. It's very low. It goes up to, like, my waist, maybe. And I'm not exactly tall. The Jaguar D-Type, obviously a very, very fast car when fully modified. It was the fastest car in Horizon 3. It was the fastest car in Forza 6, and I believe Forza 7, one of the fastest cars here in Horizon 4. But in this challenge, it only needed its stock engine of 245 horsepower. It was actually overqualified. It hit 202 miles an hour down the straightaway. So if I could have taken power off of it, I would have. I did try the C-Type, its little baby brother, but that needed too much power. So that was not viable. The D-Type, though, that was very good at this. It was very good. Yeah, I do sneakily wish you could have taken some power out of this car, because it could probably do it in less. In fact, it could do it in less, by 2/30 how much power it could do it with. But I just couldn't get the power out. Which is rare that you actually have to remove power from a car. But that is that. And that meant, because I couldn't get less power out of the D-Type, the winner is, well, the only car you haven't seen yet, which is what you're expecting, the Lotus 11. I don't know why the Lotus 11 was made like it was. I think it was a Le Mans racer. it's ridiculous. It weighs, I think, 1,001 pounds is the car that I used. It's also the size of a peanut. It's the height of a stack of papers. And it has 236 horsepower. That's it. That's all the power it had. My Fusion right now, my current car, has 245 horsepower. And this can go 200 miles an hour for less than that. That's absurd. That is the power of aerodynamics. Yeah, the Lotus has always been crazy good. It is a bit wobbly, as you saw in the run, but it doesn't really matter because once you can control it, I mean, these have racing parts on them, so they're pretty good. But yeah, controlling it, once you do get under control, it is fast, very fast, and usually the winner of one of these is usually a competition between the D-Type and the Lotus 11. In this case, because the Jag could not get some power taken out of it, the Lotus will take victory in this little challenge. So, thank you so much for watching. I'll be back with more.